dealing with confrontation. So, how to deal with confrontation in a gracious, loving Christian manner. First point, don't turn a blind eye to it or try and sweep things under the rug. That will not solve anything. If at all, it would only exacerbate the situation and make it worse. This was a weakness of mine for many, many years. And you might wonder what the reason was for that I shied away from confrontation. If we're honest, most of us would rather not be involved in a confrontation. But for me, I'm very strongly a people person. I love people. I enjoy interacting with them. And my fear was that if I shared with a person what I felt I saw that needed to be changed, or if I brought to light the area of concern, that person might get offended with me, and that could then cause a fracture or a rift in our relationship. So I chose to keep quiet about it instead. That was not good, is not healthy, not for me or that person or our relationship. Picture a rug, a carpet in your living room floor. What would happen if you keep sweeping the dirt under that rug? You don't throw it out in the trash. You don't get rid of it. It'll eventually become a lump. It'll look unseemly. It'll become home to all sorts of bugs and cooties. And you'll eventually be tripping over it. Infestations can occur. It needs to be cleaned out. So don't allow the situation or the disagreement, the issue to fester. Now, let's talk about dealing with confrontation, the verbal aspects of dealing with confrontation. In Matthew 18, verses 15, 16, and 17, the Lord Jesus, and I'll paraphrase this, very plainly states, if you have a disagreement with another person, go to them one-on-one. He didn't say to write a letter. Those days they had parchment scrolls. Today we have letter writing, we have emails, we have all sorts of online platforms. No, the Lord Jesus said, go and talk to the person one-on-one. So the first point in resolving any confrontation is verbal, personal, face-to-face communication. Hear this now. Do your best not to write things that are negative. Yes, there are some issues, but try to talk them out as much as possible. It's only when the occasion is serious enough or warrants it, then we are forced to put things in writing, but not before you talk about it. I submit that it's actually cowardly to resort to an email or another manner of communication when we can speak in person, certainly in the initial stages. Don't talk about the person behind their back when you can speak to them in person. So that's verbal. Now we talk about the written communication. List the items we are looking to address or bring redress to or correction to, that we desire change, to see some change in. List what we observe and what we are looking for, whether it be in the individual's personal manner of behavior, on the way they speak to others, on their attitude, or whether it's punctuality, or being time on task, effective on your job, or interaction with others. Be very clear. After you've talked, then we list down what we're looking for. Now let's look at the expectations. Give the person a time frame by which we expect to see these changes transpire or occur. Well, give them a reasonable time frame in which we expect to see improvement in these areas or in these things or behaviors. And then set up the time, schedule a time for the next follow-up meeting by which you can discuss if you've seen adequate change or if you're still looking for more change. Be realistic. Rome wasn't built in a day, so at least a month or something like that. And then pray with the person. Begin your meeting with prayer and end the meeting in prayer. And pray for the person during that interim period of time till you'll meet again to review the situation. Now, I grant it, our approach would be a little different if it's two peers, two folk on an equal footing, like two neighbors or two fellow workers. However, if it's between a boss and an employee, or a pastor and a congregant, now make sure we do not lord it over them. In Matthew 7:2, the Lord Jesus said, with what measure you meet, M-E-T-E, with what measure you meet, it will be meted to you. If you're hard on people, you'll get the same ricocheting back to you in the future. So be kind, be gracious, but be firm. So regardless of the working relationship, or even if the other person is not a Christian, that's very possible in a work setting, then we ought to handle the confrontation in a Christ-like manner. From our side, they need to see Christ coming through in our behavior, in our conduct, in our speech. Then, what is our goal? Why are we meeting with them? We've talked about because there are certain issues, but what's our goal? Our desire at the very outset should be to bring healing and restoration to the situation, to help that person recognize and see what it is that maybe they are missing, to recognize the challenge at hand, and to help them up and over that problem or situation. And remember, if you're a boss, their family will be relying on that paycheck. So be thoughtful, be sensitive, and be considerate. Here's some no-nos during the meeting. There should be no raising of the voice by either party. Don't yell and scream and shout at each other. Remain calm and discuss the situation and the concerns. It has been said, discussion is an exchange of knowledge, but an argument is an exchange of ignorance. So we want to have a calm discussion. And when we discuss the issues, don't blame others or pass the buck. Take personal responsibility. Say, this is something I've observed. This is something that's been brought to my notice, and I'm concerned about it. I can back it up. Instead of saying, they said this or them, using vague impersonal pronouns, and the person's wondering who on earth is thinking thus and so about me and my boss. No, you need to say, this is what I perceive, this is what I have observed, and I am concerned about this. So be specific. Or how would they know what to work on and what to change? And that's be specific in the things, the list of things you're looking to see changes in. Now, before closing, I want to share a personal situation in my life where I needed to make some dramatic changes. So usually I like to do this. If it's the bad guy, I play the bad guy. But in this guy, I really needed to make some changes. So hear this. When I first went to the United States, and then I was hired to teach in this private Christian school, around midway through the first year, or maybe even sooner than that, the principal and the chairman of the board called me in for a meeting, and I had no clue what it was about. The main issue they discussed with me was the huge culture gap, the cultural difference. And thus there was this clash between myself as the teacher and the students. It wasn't a concern at all about my knowledge of the subject at hand, but the culture, the expectations, etc. And they had a printout on paper of about, I can't remember now, about 15 different observations of either my behavior or the way I came across or the way I reacted or responded to the students, etc., etc., etc. About 15 things. That's just a rough estimate. And then They gave me a month-long time frame till they told me they wanted to meet with me again. I mean, they did touch on these things briefly. But I had that paper written with these items they wanted to see changes in. I took it home. And I knew in a month we're going to meet again. Every time I looked at that list, it felt like someone had been reading my personal diary. Like they had looked into my very soul. It was like, whoa, I was looking into the mirror. They were absolutely right in their observations. For me, listen to this, folk, it was the best thing they could have done. For me to have that in writing, on paper, to look at it every other day, it's like, you know what, you need to work on this. You need to change it. You need to make these, to handle the situation differently. It helped me to see, to reflect, even to resize certain things, and to make the requisite changes they were looking for. And believe me, they were right in what they were looking for as my employers. About a month passed, and I never heard back from my headmaster or the chairman of the board. So I met the headmaster one day, and I said to him, when are we going to have the next meeting? And he just casually said, no, we don't feel another meeting is necessary. Meaning, they had already observed the changes that they desired and were looking for. Wow, that was a relief for me, but I was also glad in my heart. Obviously, they felt there had been ample change. And then, once a year, each year, there were a couple of school days where what they called open house day. On those days, now this is after these changes had been made, parents could walk into any of their children's classrooms during class time and sit in on the lesson. This was now about a year or so later. And then they had it every year anyway. You know, some parents walked up to me after the lesson and said things like, the principal recommended that we come and sit in on your class. Wow. He was like, if you want to choose, have a good experience, go to Mr. Taylor's class. What a compliment. What an honor it was for me to hear that. And I'll never, ever forget what one parent said to me at the end of my Shakespeare class to my high school students in America. When the students had left, she walked up to my desk and said to me, where were you when I was in school? I was like, wow, what a high compliment. Now, so many of those students, decades have lapsed, they are very close to me till today. And through these decades, I really learned to love them, and I believe they me. I now drop by their homes when I'm nearby or visiting in America, and they even let me stop over. I know many of their children. I go and give their kids a hug. It's just a wonderful relationship. All this has happened because, or as a result of loving, caring, wise, thought out, prayerful Christian confrontation. Let me say it again. All this was a result of loving, caring, wise, thought out, prayerful Christian confrontation. Done the right way, in the right spirit, bold yet gracious, kind yet firm. Dear leader, adult, parent, community person, whoever you are in whatever position of responsibility, I encourage you to take these words to heart and apply them in your life, in your work relationships. God bless you.